Hey, everybody. It is me, Will Hart, here with Iris Global, and I am so excited to introduce to you some of our base leaders. As you know, we have locations all around the globe, and today I get the amazing opportunity to introduce you to our Iris Alice Springs base in Australia. And we have two of our just spectacular base leaders. We've had some time together in Australia at our family gatherings. But I want to introduce to you guys Daniel and Katy Spakman, the leaders of our Iris Alice Spring base. How are you guys?
Hey, Will.
Hey, Will. Great to be with
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, we love it. We got to connect at our last family gathering when the world wasn't shut down. And
Yes.
I just remembered how fierce of a dodgeball player your husband was and how sneaky he was at Capture the Flag.
That's true.
We love you guys, and God is doing so much in Alice Springs. So just fill everybody in on, okay, where is Alice Springs? Because people don't normally hear that name when they think of Australia. Where are you guys located? Tell us what you do.
Yeah, we're in central Australia. So if you look at the map of Australia, we're almost exactly right in the middle. We have a small town here. It's probably towards 30,000 people. And I was just hearing the news from Pemba yesterday that's about how many people that Iris are feeding at the moment in Mozambique.
Yeah, every day.
Which is just a little drop in the ocean. So to compare that to our population of we're 30,000 altogether, about just over half of that population are Indigenous, and the rest of us are either non-Indigenous Australians or internationals that are here for, there's a lot of health and welfare. It's it's sort of condition of the town.
Yeah.
So we're central, and we're working with the Indigenous tribes, probably about between 5 and 10 main language groups here. But of course, as you spread out across Australia, that gets into the hundreds. So
yeah, wow. About 1,000 miles from any decent city, so it's quite a fair way away from any big city. So quite remote, but a beautiful spot.
Yeah,
it's the main service centre for all the little communities, the remote areas. They might only have like 200 people living in them, and if they need to get access to a hospital, or there's a young woman ready to give birth, or they'll come into town and access the services here. So we're a real cross-section of a lot of tribes and different people groups, lots of internationals. It's a hub.
Amazing. And so tell us, how did you guys end up there? Because as we were talking before, you guys are from Tasmania. How did you guys end up? What did God do in your lives to bring you out to Alice Springs?
Do you want to tell the story?
The short story, we'll try and keep it short. We went to Bethel for 2 years, so that's how we first really got connected in with Iris. And we had a bit of connection previously to that, but when we were at Bethel, we got connected in with Iris, and when we were there, we felt that's when God really called us to Alice Springs. We both independently had Alice Springs come up on our hearts as a place to land when we got back out of our training at Bethel, and Katy had a heart for Aboriginal people from her days at uni, when she got really touched and moved from a speaker there, and I just always had a heart just for missions, and after a bit of YWAM exposure in my earlier years, and we that's where we just felt God lead us, and we landed here after our 2 years in Reading, and the rest is history, we can't see ourselves anywhere else. We feel really like we just want to be where God wants us to be, and that's Alice Springs at the moment, and we'll be here as long as He wants us here. So it's almost been 7.5 years now. So
wow. So
years are going by. Yeah.
Tell us about your base. Tell us about your location. What does it look like? Do you have missionaries? Give everybody just like a brief overview on what the Alice Springs, what does it look like?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the good things, other than, COVID last year, one of the good things is that we're quite accessible for a lot of Australians. And so we do have a lot of visitors through that come and visit us. At the moment, we've got people from New Zealand visiting, people from England, and people from South Africa who were in Australia. So that we always have a lot of visitors through. So hospitality is like a big part of it. We're running an Iris church that also has a Australian oversight as well, which is a really beautiful marriage, I guess. We run a bus ministry because a lot of the people that come to our church live in Aboriginal camps. So we do everything. We go and pick them up and bring them. We do a weekly community meal, like an outreach that feeds a lot of people who, are hungry, not for reasons like, that you'd find in Africa, but we do have a lot of government structures that are there to help people get food and access to health and all that kind of thing. But we have high levels of addiction. So it can be really frustrating when you're in the camps and you see children, who are hungry, who are neglected, but it's not because there's no money or there's no food around. It's just because of the circumstances around how those things are handled. So, it's hard for us. You don't want to just kind of, if we're supplying all the food for these people and they're still getting government payments, we're essentially freeing up money for alcohol and other things. So it's a balance. You want to be the hands and feet of Jesus. You want to meet needs, especially for the kids, when they're hungry or needy, like that really pulls at your heart, but also not enabling the people. So, it's a bit of a balance sometimes.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny, like a lot of mission stuff, everybody thinks, oh, this is, you just go and you help and you give. But when you actually get in and see the complexity of it, those situations are such a challenge. So you have, like you mentioned, the bus program, you're feeding, you're doing, other programs that you guys are running?
Yeah, at the moment we're doing, so our community meal, we're doing a weekly Bible study with whoever's hungry and burning. And part of that has been a weekly outreach as well for the people who don't know Jesus. So that's been fun to watch some people getting saved lately. We've got a crisis support program. So people who are, we noticed when we first moved here that around April, the temperature really drops. So we're used to quite hot weather, but then in winter it can get down to freezing temperatures. And the vulnerable, I'd go and visit, families that had adopted us in, and we'd see like some old people there one day, the next they'd literally just be dead, like from exposure, because a lot of them live outside, they sleep outside. And in that first few years in the winter, we were just like going to Kmart, I guess that's kind of equivalent to one of your shopping centers, and buying like cheap coats and just trying to keep people warm. And then recently there's been some people in Queensland who have sent us shipping containers full of warm clothing and blankets. So every winter, about this time every winter, as the cooler weather just is coming up, I just praise God, because there's really great things that we can do, just practical, just to assist people. So that crisis support. And then the other thing on our heart that we don't get to enough is the bush support ministry. And so the remote communities, the ones that we've been to that are furthest away, take all day to get there, like 10 to 14 hours. There's a bush bus, which is a real experience. If you come, you should go on it.
Dula, just what you got to describe what it is. What is a bush bus?
Well, you kind of get on at 6 a.m. and you have all. It's just basically you and a lot of Indigenous people who you don't understand. And, you see all kinds of things like, I'm giggling because it's kind of, one of those things. But, like lots of people, I've had one experience where, a woman gets to the front and she kind of starts preaching. You don't really know what she's saying. She's completely drunk. And she's screaming, and then suddenly other people in the back of the bus are screaming back at her, and you're kind of in the middle of them, and there's always lots of kids. It's always lots of fun. Often you have to clean up messes because you're on the bus for so long. Yeah. And sometimes the kids don't feel comfortable to tell the bus driver to stop, so then you're dealing with other things. I just wear perfume and
Oh, I love it. I love it. I've been on so many buses in Africa with like goats screaming and chickens sitting next to you. You China. All it's amazing. I love it because we get to be with the people, and
Exactly.
so you guys go to these rural villages or these rural towns, and what do you guys do?
They call remote communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we go house to house. The more recent thing that we've done in the last 12 months is we've accessed some of those solar powered audio Bibles.
Yes.
So we've been able to download their languages. Well, there's only one main one, Pitjantjatjara, that's available. And we've loaded up. We've asked permission from different worship artists in our area to load their stuff onto there, and we're handing out those, just going house to house and praying. We're also often responding to crisis. Like sometimes pastors will call us out because they want to do big outreaches and they just want us to join in and help, and we just cook sausages or do whatever they want us to do. Other times there might be a funeral on, and so we've spent a bit of time with the person that's passed away in the hospital because they come to town, and sometimes their families know that we're the people that has been sitting with them when they've been dying, and so they want us to take the funeral or they want us to be present. So that's another big ministry that we do in the bush, the funerals.
Wow. So when you guys got started 7 years ago, and you went from Bethel and got this vision, is this something you ever imagined you would be doing? Is this something like how would you have explained this to yourself 7 years ago? Would you have like, is it more than what you expected? Is it less? Is it crazier?
Probably, definitely more. I think, like you land in a place, and I think, a lot of missionaries would probably say the same. Like you have a bit of a picture that, we had no desire or intent to lead a church, for example, that we were really just wanting to be, missionaries, supporting churches. And so, I think a lot of missionaries will find that they come to a place and then there's a need that comes up. And in this case, there was a church, a small church that the leaders were moving, to another town, and they asked us if we'd take on the church. And, like we'd been through a process, God, was gracious with us and got us to a place where we'd actually consider it. Whereas maybe 2 years earlier, we may have never, just said no from the beginning. But it's just interesting how the journey God takes you on. And so, before we know it, we're, running a church, and then it comes with that. And then you see, all these things you don't know, and you're not sure what things are going to look like. But I guess as missionaries, you just want to you lay your life down, and where there's the need and where God, whatever God breathes on, you want to be involved, and God has been, there's definitely been struggles, as any place, and you see the people and the need and all that, it moves you a lot and breaks you a lot, but God, when you're in His will, I think that's the biggest thing we've learned. When you're in His will, like there's no better place, and despite the challenges and the amount of time you put in and energy, and seeing people go around in circles and being disheartened, God brings amazing testimonies just when you need it, or people to come and encourage you, and and it's just been it is a roller coaster, but like there's nowhere else we'd want to be than in His will, and I think that's I think that's the beautiful thing about missions, isn't it? Often that you just lay yourself down and let God have His way, and and hopefully He continues to have His way, out here.
When we first arrived here, I didn't really have a whole lot of expectation. I just knew that God, like I'd been reading in the newspapers and different things, hearing all the challenges that the Indigenous people go through, especially like the young people's mental health and committing suicide, and the abuse of the kids, and knowing, like, because of I did a social work degree, and we were trained by an Indigenous person from the stolen generation. You can Google that. That's complex history of Australia. But for me, I just felt like God's heart towards the people, and that's never changed. Like, I think, when he connects you with the people before you're there, you're just motivated by that. Like, when you arrive, you're just like, what? We didn't really have expectations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just came and said, God, like, what does this look like? The biggest thing we wanted to do was not come in and tell the people what to do, not to colonize, not to, cause more trouble or remove kids or anything like that. In the context of the history here, we just wanted to come in and serve and ask, learn. I guess we've been learning for 7 years. And we're never going to stop. But just, getting language, sitting with the people, and the whole, I guess that's, where the Iris DNA really suited us, the whole thing of low and slow. We knew there was something of that DNA, and putting Jesus first, and this is our worship to him.
Yeah.
If revival never happens, we hope we'll die trying if it doesn't, but that's not why we're here.
Right.
Essentially, we're here because we love Jesus, and that's our worship. And so keeping that the main thing has it's like whatever happens, the more of the cost that you get to pay to be here, the more you realize he's worthy of it. Like, if he can stretch us as far as he can on this earth to love him as much as we can, that's the goal.
Yeah.
And just to bring as many people into that relationship with him as we can along the way. So
come on, I love it, guys. It's so amazing. I want to. Do you have, as you look back over the 7 years, is there something that sticks out to you? You were saying, Daniel, that God comes along and you hear this, you have this moment, a miracle or a testimony that keeps you encouraged. What's God been doing recently that's been really encouraging you? What are you watching God do right now?
Well, I think from the more recent, I think in the last year, there was just actually just before COVID, we've been blessed here. We haven't had much COVID in Australia at all. In fact, we haven't had much of a close down in Alice Springs as well, especially being quite remote. So, but initially we had to close the church down for a couple of months. But just before that all happened, there was we just heard a testimony from a man out in a community about 3 hours away, and this man had a young family, and he was on drugs and dealing drugs and alcohol and addictions and gambling and all this sort of thing. And then we just heard this testimony where one day he had his earphones in his ear, and he heard God speak to him in his language through his earphones as he was listening to some music or something. And it was the first time he'd heard himself being called a son, since his father passed away. So God came to him through his earphones and spoke to him, and immediately, just his heart was touched and moved. And to this day, it's almost been a year, he's still going so strong for God. And every time we check in with the local pastor, his whole life has changed. His family are now got enough food on the table. He just wants to be out preaching, and he's out as much as he can. He's traveling, and so just I guess I think that's the things that move me the most are those testimonies where someone's heart's been changed. We need so much healing here. There's so much sickness.
There is a lot of
There's
sickness.
so much, and we want to see more physical healing, but. The ones that really get me are when people's hearts are the miracle of salvation. I really moves me the most, and so that story was just so encouraging, not just for me, but for the pastor that was in that area. He also said he was just starting to feel quite low and discouraged as well, and then suddenly, and he had other testimonies around the same time as well. But these ones, they're just beautiful how God moves. He's the best evangelist.
I agree, and I love that. The miracles. Well, Rollins says it. Miracles. We don't chase the miracles. The miracles, the healings, all that stuff just follows us. But the greatest miracle, the most important one is coming to Him. That's why we give our lives. Katy, do you have something that's been sticking out? God's speaking to you. You've watched God do recently.
I was just thinking of a testimony that's been blessing me lately. At the moment, we have apparently they're saying it's worse than it's ever been. I was sitting with a woman the other day who she's lived here for 40 years, but she was saying that the youth crime in our area is the highest it's ever been. And, it's really intense. Like, just people don't want to go out at night, and there's just mobs of kids, as young as like 8 years old and jumping through windows. And so I think for us, sometimes it just feels frustrating that you can't get to everyone. You want to go, you want to be doing more. But our team's small, and we haven't, at the moment we're praying for more help, that we need people who have a heart for children and for youth. And so this is like a really big area that's been on my heart. And we were in a meeting a number of weeks ago, but this little boy, he just came. He was so young, maybe 9 or 10 years old. And he was just broken at the altar. I could just see him, the tears streaming down. And I just checked in with him, what was happening. And he said, my brother has been getting me to break into to places with him. Like, there's groups, family groups. They'll be, breaking windows, jumping in and grabbing keys and stealing cars and doing stuff. And he said, I just feel so rubbish when I do it. It's rubbish. I just want to not do that anymore. And as I prayed with him, there was just that sense he knew that he couldn't fix himself. He, like, that need for a savior, the grace of that empowerment from heaven, he just was stuck. And that sense of like, I can't do anything without God, like that humility before the Lord was just so beautiful. And just to stand with him in that moment as he repented and gave his life back to the Lord. And and then he started hearing things. I said, what happened as we were praying? And he said, I was hearing things. I was hearing music from heaven, and I asked him what he heard, and he said, I heard trumpets. And so just awesome, like, engaging with the kids when the Lord brings that to be able to happen. It's awesome.
I love it. Come on. Okay, really, really quick, because we're about done with time here. To your own family, kids, tell us about just yourselves really quick. You said you've been married how long?
20 years last November.
Come on, congratulations. Yeah. Kids, how many kids?
2 sons. We've got an older boy who's nearly 18. Can you believe he's turning 18 in May? So he'll be an adult. We'll be parents of an adult. And then we've got our baby, who's taller than me, way taller than me, is he's 15, turning 16 in August.
Awesome.
So
2 boys.
Yeah, Elijah and Jesse, they're some of our heroes. We love them.
Come on. Okay, what does a date night look like for you guys? Restaurant, movie, come on.
Few and far between, but don't take that as a good example. Okay?
Listen, I wouldn't ask my wife that question, so. Right.
Mix, sometimes dinner, sometimes just a drink, sometimes just a cup of tea at the end of the night when, in our lounge room. We just, whatever's available, whenever it's available.
We're very romantic. My most romantic moment's a cup of tea.
That's awesome.
I'm not that hard to please.
Okay, so last thing, how many missionaries do you guys currently have?
Oh, goodness. Well, we've just had a couple of people leave. Have you calculated recently? We've got a lot of volunteers. Yeah. At the moment, we probably have about 20 people helping us altogether. Yeah.
Fantastic.
But as far as missionaries that have come here specifically to partner with the ministry, there's been a few that have left recently, but
we've probably got three formally.
But then through the church and other means, we've got lots of volunteers, which has been very helpful and a big blessing.
I love it.
But there's people talking about coming, so we're trusting that God will bring the right people.
Come on. Yeah. Well, listen, if people want to get in contact with you guys, what's the best way to do that? Do you have social media, website, just tell, if people are watching this, they want to get in contact, how can they do that?
Iris Alice Springs on Facebook is a good way. We answer messages on there, and
we're just about to launch our own website, irisalicepsprings.org.au, I think it is. But we also are on the Iris Global website as well. So you can find us through those ways.
Awesome.
These are the main ways at the moment. Yeah.
Come on. You guys on Instagram? People want to go and see photos and no?
Do you know what? We haven't. I waste enough time on other social media things, but this year I've just got an Instagram account, like in the last 2 months. So
Come on. So if people want to follow, is that for the ministry? Is that for you, or doesn't even matter? If people want to follow that, how do they find that? What?
There's a nice one that was set up.
Oh, I don't even know that. I think someone else, someone down the track did that. I don't know about our Instagram, Iris Elder Springs, but definitely a personal one, Katy Spakman.
Awesome.
So we need to probably get with it and get an Iris one too.
Listen, you don't know how many bases I chat with. They're like, we don't even have time. And I say, I love that. See, this is what I love about our team. This is why I love sharing your stories in your life, because honestly, the goal is not all of those things. The goal is our time serving, loving. That's where the focus is. And you'd be amazed at how many bases and base leaders say the exact same thing. Their minds and their hearts are not on getting word out. It's actually doing the work of. And I love you guys. I'm so grateful for this time that we just got to hang out. And I just want to encourage anybody that's watching this, reach out. There's a ton of ways you just heard about, but even on our Iris Global website, you can find information. And if you want to connect, and even if you want to sow, there's places that you can do that there on our Iris website. So guys, Daniel, Katy, thank you so much for just taking this time out. I know it's early in the morning where you're at, so thank you so much for just pulling away and shooting this. And I'm going to leave the last words with you. Is there anything you want to say to anybody that's watching this? Last words. You get it.
Yeah. Nothing's impossible with Him, with God, and without Him we can do nothing. And yeah, our goal in life is to love Him as much as we can.
Come on. Listen.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We'll leave it at that. Guys, listen, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who watch this, thank you. If you liked it, hit subscribe. So anytime we put one of these out, you can just get another amazing testimony. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we will catch you later.